This is the Mountaineer Moment, your source for all things West Virginia football and basketball. From pregame to postgame coverage and breaking news, we've got you covered. Let's go. Welcome to episode number 35 of Mountaineer Moment podcast. My name's Troy, and I am your host here on Mountaineer Moment, available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. Wherever you're listening or watching, please consider subscribing to the moment here as we bring you all you need to know on West Virginia football and basketball. And now we're in the thick of things in the middle of football season, and Mountaineers coming off of a 2-game stretch to open up Big 12 conference play that has been horrendous, to say the very least. And we're going to talk about some of that. We're going to talk in this episode number 35, specifically about this Mountaineer defense, who in the non-conference looked not just pretty good, looked really good for certain moments throughout the non-conference. We're tied with the Big 12 lead in sacks. We're among, I think, the top 15 in the country in rushing yards allowed per attempt from the defense, and that has not been the case to open up Big 12 conference play, and the offense has been doing what they've been doing all season, which is struggle. And so you put that together with a defense that has taken several steps backward, and you get the reason for this Mountaineer struggle. A 41-10 loss against Kansas, followed up by, in the Big 12 home opener against Utah, 48-14 this past Saturday. And so it's back to the drawing board. It's all hands on deck. Like, whatever you can do to, I don't even want to say turn the season around at this point, but whatever you can do to not embarrass yourself like you have over the last couple weeks, you got to figure out a way to do that. And it doesn't get any easier with the Mountaineers' upcoming game against the 23rd ranked undefeated BYU Cougars on Friday night in Provo. Should be obviously a fun atmosphere for what they do out there in Utah, but doesn't get easier. And before this week we get into focused BYU conversation, we are going to spend, again, this episode talking about this Mountaineer defense in the non-conference and in these two conference games, and what's looked different, what I'm noticing, what's wrong, can it be fixed, and how quickly can it be fixed. So all those kind of thoughts and questions being answered here on this episode of Mountaineer Moment. But again, available on all those different platforms. Wherever you're at, please consider subscribing because this is a growing podcast, growing day by day. Super thankful and appreciative of all the support, all the comments on YouTube that we've been getting as of late. And we're 35 episodes in, remarkably, and we started literally the week of Robert Morris, right, with pregame coverage there. So we're dropping several episodes a week, previewing the matchups that the Mountaineers are entering into as we count down to kickoff every week, and then 2 to 3 episodes as part of the post-game coverage, giving my thoughts on what transpired on the field the previous Saturday, or in this case it'll be the previous Friday night, as the Mountaineers will be going up against BYU again on Friday. But as the calendar gets ready to turn to October, Mountaineers are 5 games into the season, sitting at 2-3, 0-2 in conference play, and again have lost those 2 games in blowout fashion. What could go wrong, did go wrong, has gone wrong for the Mountaineers. And when do you stop the bleeding? How can you salvage a couple wins? How can you literally get a few first downs and keep games interesting? Because the Mountaineers went, in both of these games, they've gotten down big in a hurry, right? You're down 28-0 against Utah at half, and then, they come out and score again. So you're down 35-0 at home against Utah. And Nico Markiel, storyline, obviously didn't play in that one with an injury to his foot, and he's now being ruled out for a few weeks as he's seeing another specialist with this foot injury that he has out in Arizona, where, interestingly enough, is where Nico is from. So obviously hope to have him back, at least playable, right? I mean, this ever-changing quarterback situation, I feel like I'm so repetitive here sometimes on Mountaineer Moment, but that's just the story, is this quarterback room, and we do not know. We don't have even the slightest clue as to who's going to start this coming Friday night against BYU. But that's enough about the offense, and that's enough about that quarterback situation. So Mountaineers blown out twice to start conference play, and while things haven't changed from the offense, like as far as their production, like, I mean, you know, offense hasn't been very good all year. Just hasn't. Not much consistency there. You know, best game, obviously, offensively was against Pitt, and that's in large part due to 3 consecutive scoring drives to end the game in that backyard brawl and that in comeback fashion. But outscored to start Big 12 play 89-24 over the last 2 games. Not pretty, but the defense has looked considerably better in that non-conference schedule. So against Robert Morris, against Ohio, in that loss even, defense kept Janet at 3 interceptions in the second half. Against Pitt, and we really are. We've seen a different defense over the last 2 weeks. And so what's going on, right? Is it just this fact that they've taken a step up in, you know, maybe competition? Maybe Pitt's not even as good as we were thinking. But against Kansas and against Utah, we didn't get the same defense, and we're going to talk about that. So I'm going to break down really 3 things here that I would say are observations that are indicative of the product that we've seen on the field from the Mountaineer defense. And the first one, it starts with the West Virginia secondary. That was a hot topic of conversation entering the season with, you know, the quote-unquote talent in these pieces that they brought in to bolster this secondary. And, you know, Fred Perry, although he's gotten himself in trouble a couple times, but he's been as advertised, you know, leading the team in tackles for the Mountaineers. But aside from him, there have been some issues in the secondary, and it was very noticeable on Saturday against Utah. Utah did exactly what they wanted to do, running the football and through the air. So combined with Devin Dampier and the backup quarterback, they went 25 for 30 and had 5 touchdowns to go along with 290 yards through the air. So as many touchdowns through the air as incompletions. That's the kind of day it was for Utah, and that's the kind of day it was for this West Virginia defense that struggled to defend the pass. So, you know, you got Tarnu and Scruggs, Michael Coates, and guys that just aren't quite getting it done to the level at which you, A, expected maybe, and B, the level that you need them to remain competitive. Again, we know the story with the offense. We know the struggles. We know the injuries. We know the concerns at every position, from the offensive line to the quarterbacks to the receivers to the tight ends to the running backs. Every position, there's question marks and there's been struggles this season. The defense wasn't an area that we were saying was struggling through the non-conference. But now we are. And it starts with this secondary who, again, I mean, even against Kansas. Now, Jalen Daniels didn't throw for the level of efficiency that Dampier did, but he still threw 3 touchdowns. And so 2 weeks to start Big 12 play, you've given up 8 touchdowns through the air and just 1 interception, which was a gift from Dampier, who just threw a really, really bad pass right into West Virginia's hands. Nick Taylor was the defender that caught that pass, but man. And against Utah, noticeably, you know, what I was looking at in that secondary, There were mismatches that Utah was able to exploit, such as, their bigger targets on smaller guys for West Virginia, and there weren't adjustments being made in the secondary. That's one thing I certainly noticed. And then several occasions. Now, again, you're going to have this if you have a team go for 25 for 30 for nearly 300 yards and 5 touchdowns. Not all of those, right? Captain Obvious here. Not all of those are contested catches, right? You didn't have 25, 50, 50 balls caught for Utah. You had guys open. I mean, you had guys open. In a few plays, there was a significant miscommunication in the secondary that you just can't afford to have happen. And you can blame it on new players, new system, new this, new that, but this is game 5 into the season, and you're having mental lapses that are leading to a Utah offense, again, just simply doing whatever they wanted to through the air. You struggled. This West Virginia secondary undoubtedly is underperforming to what we thought, and certainly what they were doing to start the season. Again, you had 3 interceptions against Ohio. You picked off Eli Holstein of Pitt. Darian Lewis got a pick in that game. And not to say that game didn't have their struggles defensively, in the secondary, but you're able to get a turnover. And, just one turnover the last 2 weeks. And again, that was a gift. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But this secondary is a major reason for West Virginia's struggles. Their pass coverage was non-existent in the 25 for 30 game from Utah. Secondly, now again, if you don't have a good pass defense, you better have a good run defense, and West Virginia did through 3 games. That has since taken a step backwards. So in back-to-back games, again, these games were very interesting, or very similar as well, in this loss to Kansas on the road and the loss to Utah at home. But in both of those games, West Virginia surrendered 242 yards on the ground. Kansas reached that mark on 41 carries, good for an average of almost 6 yards, and Utah got there on 47 carries, just over 5 yards a carry. So what happened? Because, again, this was a team, I believe it was 12th. This team was ranked 12th through 3 games in the country in yards per attempt on defense. Something changed, and something changed in a hurry, and we see that as evidenced by these last 2 games. And, if you have, again, pass defense, run defense, we're getting pretty simple here, but if you have neither of these things working out in your favor, then you're going to land yourself in the results that you found over the last couple weeks, giving up 40-plus points. 242 yards a game over the last 2 games, both of these Big 12 opponents doing that to you. Now, Utah came into the game really, really strong in the running game this year, and they continued to prove that against West Virginia. Now, again, for reference, if you're thinking, well, they're non-conference, West Virginia played Robert Morris, they played Ohio and this and that, but against Pitt, West Virginia got after it, right? And Pitt had their fair share of struggles coming in the running game, but they had 46 rushing yards. Pitt had just 46 rushing yards, so, about 200 yards less than you've given up the last 2 weeks. And now Pitt still put up some points, obviously, with 24 points, but, you stop the run. Right, even if Pitt had success through the air, which they did at times, obviously, in that backyard brawl, Holstein, threw for 300 yards, 303 yards for him. But you took away an element of the game in the rushing attack, and you were able to get a comeback win as a result. Gave up just 24 points. But the defense has backtracked to this point where, again, if you can't take away one of these things and you have the offense that you're facing firing on all cylinders through the air and on the ground, it's just 2 + 2 = 4, right? You're going to have you're going to give up a lot of points. You're going to have a long night ahead of you. And that's what West Virginia has been looking at over the last 2 weeks. Through the air, teams are doing what they wanted and being efficient. And on the ground, teams are averaging, 5.5 yards a carry for 240. So Not a good recipe. And thirdly, 3 out of 4 here. Number 3 is the turnovers. West Virginia's defense has failed to create turnovers like they had the first 3 weeks of the season. You picked up 6 total through the first 3 weeks, and now again just 1 over the last 2 weeks in Big 12 conference play. And again, that lone turnover was an interception by Nick Taylor when it was thrown directly to him. It was almost like he could have called a fair catch because it was just like an odd pass from Dampier, in the first half of that game. But we know, again, the story with this Mountaineer offense that is struggling tremendously. It doesn't matter who they put at quarterback. Doesn't matter who they insert in the backfield or running back. There's struggles, and you hope that you get Ty Edwards back sooner rather than later because of his performance against Pitt. Though I don't know that we can count on that every single week. But he's been missed. Obviously, Jaheim is missed since he went down. I mean, there's injuries here. But this offense, because of how bad they're struggling, you have a defense that has to create chaos. You have a defense that has to create turnovers. And you're just not over the last couple weeks. Because even if the first 2 things we talked about were true, even if an offense is really kind of doing what they want through the air, and they're getting it done on the ground, and you can't seem to stop anything, 7, 8 consecutive runs, and you can't stop it, man, maybe on one of those you force a fumble. Man, maybe on one of those you get a pick and you get a nice return out of it so you can get your offense in good field position where they can't help but score, right? Like this is crazy. And because of the lack of turnovers, I mean, it's just a recipe for disaster. And that's what we've seen. So the box score and, again, the eye test as far as what we've seen over the last 2 weeks is indicative of a team that's getting blown out. Like, it makes sense. What you're watching with your eyes makes sense to the results that you're seeing post-game. West Virginia's gotten blown out twice, and that's because they're struggling defensively. And one of those things they're struggling to do that they were doing early on in the season is create turnovers. All right, fourthly, and we have to go here. Touched on it already. But fourthly, the reason the defense is struggling over the last 2 games is due to this lack of offensive production. Now, again, you can sit here and say, well, it doesn't matter what the offense does. The defense should step up and play well. But in my response to that is, through 3 games, we got away with it. You know what I mean? Like, we got away with it, right? We played Robert Morris. Offense had some woes, had lots of fumbles. But it was Robert Morris, and he got away with it. Against Ohio, now, you lost that game, but the only reason you were in that game was because of the defense. I mean, they gave up just 17 points, had 3 second-half interceptions, and the Mountaineer offense just couldn't capitalize. So that game could have and should have been worse. But the defense was able to keep you in it by fighting their tails off and getting and doing what they could do. Against Pitt, right? The offense came alive late and did some things early, but they came alive late. But, just as West Virginia got 3 consecutive scores to win that game, the defense got consecutive stops to win that game. And so, if you would have told me, we'll put it this way. If you would have told me that through the first 2 Big 12 games that West Virginia's offense was going to continue to struggle, I would have told you that at some point that's going to come back to bite them because the defense can't sustain keeping them in every single game. Right? It's not fair. The defense is supposed to help the offense. Offense is supposed to help with the defense. And it's been the defense, again, through that non-conference that kept you in games, allowed you to come back in the Pitt game, allowed you to stay in the game against Ohio somehow, some way, even though the offense was horrendous. It kept you in it. And at some point that was going to catch up to you. And unfortunately, in the case for the Mountaineers, it has caught up to them through the first 2 games of the Big 12 season. I mean, 3 and out, punt, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, turnover on downs, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. Like, when your defense is on the field as much as they've been, when they're starting in the field position that they're in because your defense can't move the football or your offense can't move the football, it's going to catch up to you. And it has. Again, I'm not saying that West Virginia's offense needs to come out and drop 40, because maybe we just don't have an offense that's capable of that. But it's hard to get overly upset with this defense because of how bad this offense has been. They're not helping the defense at all. Teams are running the ball effectively. Teams are passing it through the air efficiently. And you're not forcing turnovers. And you've suffered the consequences of that. You've lost 2 consecutive games in blowout fashion in Big 12 play. And it's not getting easier. We said it a few moments ago, but now as we really, again, here on Mountaineer Moment, transition to focusing on the matchup with BYU coming up on Friday, now, you got a ranked team on your schedule, on the road, on a Friday night, a long way from home, 10:30 kickoff Eastern, right? It doesn't get easier, and this defense needs to figure some things out. Now, again, that fourth point about this offense not helping them, that's completely valid. We can all jump on board with that one. This offense hasn't done much help for the defense. But offense aside, there are noticeable differences in the Mountaineers we've seen the last 2 weeks and the Mountaineer defense that we saw in the non-conference. And, Zach Alley and company need to find a way to get back to showing some resilience. Hard edge, whatever you want to call it. There was no resilience against Utah. Scored on their 5 of their first 6 drives, scored touchdowns. And the other one, again, was an interception that was just a really, really bad throw. West Virginia didn't earn it. It was just a really, really bad throw. So as much as the offense has a million things to fix, the defense has a lot of things to fix as well. And you only got a few days at this point before you're on the road in Provo against a very good, unbeaten BYU team. And so you got to figure some things out, and you got to figure it out in a hurry as far as what this defense is doing. But again, this is episode number 35 of Mountaineer Moment. And we'll have a few more episodes coming and the countdown to kickoff, just like we've done every week here on Mountaineer Moment. So be sure to check back this week for more episodes coming. Before the Mountaineers kick things off against BYU on Friday night. Be sure to set your alarm or take a nap at work. I don't know, 10:30 kickoff. But we'll see you next time on Mountaineer Moment.